Hello and welcome to episode 41 of When the Flames Go Up, the ATFC podcast. Tonight, me and Julian discuss Altrincham at home, the 2-1 win, and Dagenham and Redbridge away last night, which was a 3-2 defeat, as we record. I didn't go last night because I had a fever. Terrible, terrible scenes, really. But it did give me a good excuse not to go to Dag Red, because it's one of my closest away games. Normally, I just feel absolutely obliged to go and watch that game, but I didn't in the end. Opted for home, and it worked in my favour really. Other than the £23 ticket that I'd spend. Speaking of money, um, what a segue! This podcast's been going for over a year now, which is quite mad. I think it's exactly 12 months of podcasts and 41 episodes we've done. Um, what it did mean is I got kind of sidetracked and then hit by the podcast hosting fee that I paid last year, not not really considering that I'd have to pay it again. It is an annual fee. So yeah, I decided to set up a Ko-fi account or coffee account. It's just a place where you can, for example, donate the price of a coffee um, towards next year's hosting fee, basically. Not demanding any money, of course. And we're not going to monetize this podcast, so there's any ads in it. This should stay ad free unless someone fancies sponsoring. I'll do an ad read, sure. So it works out about £90 for 12 months, um, and it's billed annually, which but it's probably my fault, but it's a bit cheaper. Anyway, so I've set the Ko-fi account up. It's ko-fi.com, so ko dash fi.com/ATFC podcast. I've set the price as £3 because that's the price of a pint of Carlsberg in the George in Aldershot. Obviously, I think you can decide to um, donate as much as you like or as little as you like. But yeah, I will try not to bang on about it too much. But we've got a goal for yeah £90 by this time next year. So if you fancy contributing, then feel free. Maybe at some point, yeah, all the money, none of the money is going to me. It's only going towards this. Just so you know. And I better shut up and let this episode come about. But yeah, if you've got any questions, email atfcpodcast@gmail.com and there'll be a link in the description with all the details. So yeah, enjoy the episode and up the shots. So the shots in 17th place, as we currently record. There's some games on tonight that I didn't realise were on tonight, but there are. After Saturday's 2-1 win at home to Altrincham, with James Henry getting a double, 4 minutes apart from either of those goals, and a late consolation from Altrincham after they went down to 10 men in the 78th minute. Akpan with the assist for the first goal for Henry. And then I mean, he put the ball forward at least for the second goal, which Henry then managed to get in the way of the clearance and race through, clear on goal, and make it 2-0 to the shots. We're going to start there. I'm sure this chat will quickly descend into the Dagenham Redbridge game, but we'll keep it light with the positives early doors. We've got Julian on the line tonight. I'm going to come to you first. What are your thoughts on the Altrincham game at the weekend?
Yeah, thanks, Will. It was a really interesting game for me because, the first 15 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes, it didn't feel like we even got a touch of the ball, to be honest. Altrincham were looking really positive, although there didn't feel like there was a real cutting edge. But after that sort of 20 minutes, I think we started to grow into the game a little bit, and we started to get a few opportunities. And of course, then it turned into the James Henry show, didn't it? And it felt like we were back in the early part of the season again. He was looking sharp. He was back to his sort of familiar just behind the front two role as well, which, yeah, I think Tommy's been tinkering a little bit, not still quite sure what his favourite formation is, whether or not he isn't sure whether he just is continually changing it depending on the opposition, but. It's very much like the formation from last season with two up top and then one in behind. And to be fair to James Henry, he really just steal the show. I was looking at his stats actually, and I was really surprised that he's only scored once in the last 13 games. I felt like it had been more than that, but in fact, that was his first goal at home since August. So definitely a long time overdue. And again, he just sort of stamped his class on the game. He was definitely the difference between the two teams. And yeah, I thought we really took hold of it after the first 20 minutes or so, and were well worth our lead at half time. Second half was interesting as well because it felt like we were really comfortable, really felt like we were comfortable. And yet, if you look at the last 45 minutes, we actually lost that 1-0, which seems bizarre to me. But it felt really comfortable. And okay, there was a little bit of apprehension in the last sort of 5 minutes of injury time. But yeah, I just thought that we looked really good value for the win. And it was just nice to see this sort of side of us coming through again, looking really confident, looking in control of the game, and just taking every opportunity. There was one moment. I don't normally highlight players, but Akpan for me was again played a superb game. There was one moment in the second half where we had a we had a corner. I think it was Josh Barrett put it in, and the ball was cleared out. And it was a bit of a 50-50 between Akpan and their player. And he just looked like a man possessed. He was charging in and he just took the ball out and the player as well. And it was a superb tackle. And for me, that was worth the entrance fee alone. He was absolutely superb in that moment. But again, his general contribution was excellent. He was I think Tommy mentioned it actually that for the first 4 or 5 attempts, he didn't find his intended target in the final third, but he was responsible for that assist for the first goal, and thought he had an absolutely excellent game on Saturday. But yeah, really really enjoyed the game, and good to get back to anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there were plenty of positives. And yeah, I'll start with Akpan to be honest, because I think that we kind of discussed it a couple of weeks in a row. I think about how we'd not really seen our wing backs doing much like we expect them to do, like Glover did last season, and Ollie Scott, whoever was filling in, were able to get forward. And I think on Saturday we definitely saw Akpan able to get forward all game long. Um, and Ryan Jones was able to get quite far ahead. And even Ollie Scott was working with him. So in that kind of, if you squint, you could have seen that it looked a bit like Harfield, slotting in that left centre back role. Yeah, and Akpan's delivery, I think, in the second half. I mean, there was one where he kind of clipped a little ball, and if I mean, I was like, oh, it's a bit, it was kind of that. Not too deep. I think it was kind of in line with the 18-yard box, but the way he clipped it in was a bit Trent Alexander-Arnold, kind of like a bit of a maverick right back position player. So going forward, I mean that was great to see, and definitely made us look comfortable in the second half. It didn't look like we were sitting back on our or resting on the 2-0 lead. And yeah, I think you mentioned at the start, kind of Alti didn't really have that cutting edge. Obviously, it did work out in the end that Regan Lee was not playing, despite not being in their squad for their under 21s National League Cup game, which did scare me. I thought maybe there was some sort of rule that I'd missed out. But you could definitely see the difference he would make in that team, and how they would have had a focal point either on the left or through the middle with him in the side. Um, Yeah, and I suppose the first goal for Akpan's ball in there, where James Henry kind of meets it, was very similar to the Gateshead kind of chance that got rebounded and fell its way to Barham. So I mean, it's only good that Henry's kind of getting further forward and find himself in the box more, because I think we did find a few games in a row where he was stuck outside the box or wasn't able to get forward as much. So that was good to see, and hopefully that continues. Obviously, he did end up getting a yellow card, meaning that he was suspended for the Dag Red away game, which is a big miss, especially because we haven't got a game on Saturday. We could have had, as much rest as he likes after that. So that was the only possible kind of disappointment from that game. Um, other than the clean sheet, losing the clean sheet. I'm not sure what you thought of the kind of the defending for their goal. It was slightly shoddy after the kind of the control that we had. I feel like we should have maybe been able to hold on a little bit better. What did you think?
Yeah, I think it's typical Aldershot, isn't it? You know, you don't get an easy ride, and particularly when you're 2-0 up, playing against 10 men, you know, the logical side of you would say that you should be able to quite comfortably see the game out. I thought to his credit, when we lost the defense changed at half time with Ellison going off, I thought Theo slipped into the back four, the back three really well. He's obviously a player that when he can see everything in front of him, you know, and has that time to play the ball, he does look a good player. And I thought he was really good in the back three. Yeah, there is the side of the argument that, well, Altrincham didn't really offer anything to put any pressure on him, so he was made to look good. But you know, he still had a job to do, and I thought he did it really well. Um, Probably lack of concentration for their goal. Having said that, Bickerstaff scored his first goal for Altrincham and took it really well. It was a really good finish. And yeah, he's I think from memory he's on loan from Wrexham, so you can see there that there's a player in there for sure, and I'm sure he'll go on and do great things. But just a couple of other things I wanted to mention, Will. I thought the fitness levels were really good on Saturday. It felt for the first time that we weren't worrying about certain players only lasting 60 or 70 minutes. So I noticed that Tommy did praised Josh Barrett for his work rate on Saturday. And if you look at the way we pressed and harried Altrincham, we didn't give them any time. And I thought that was probably our best pressing game, if you can call it such a thing, our best pressing game of the season. You know, we were putting it, even in the first half, we were blocking shots and getting in front of the ball and you know, doing the things that you have to do, the nitty gritty of playing football in National League level. But I thought we did it really well. And again, I'm going to mention Akpan because his fitness levels are unbelievable. It doesn't matter. You would not know whether it's minute one or minute 91 with Akpan. He will still just keep going. And I'd love to be able to have access to the fitness records that they keep on sort of distance run and all that sort of stuff because I thought we looked the fittest we'd looked actually all season in that game, and that may well have been the difference between the results. So yeah, really really pleased with Saturday, and was really looking forward to, as I think you mentioned it in the WhatsApp group, Will, looking at potentially a three-match unbeaten run on Tuesday, which I'm sure we will come on to discuss.
Yes, yeah, we probably should get to that point. Yeah, it's interesting about the Widrington slotting back into that middle centre back position when Ellison went off. I presume with concussion, he wasn't in the squad for last night either. Um, that yeah, that central centre back position does seem to be that's where you want to be if you're a player in this team because you basically get the best of both worlds. You just get to man mark someone and head the ball when you can. If you miss the header, it's probably going to Dewhurst. If the guy holding it up manages to pass it to someone else, it's someone else that was meant to mark the other guy. So I think it's the easiest one. And I think it's a kind of theme of Tommy's teams. I mean, Kean Harris had some plenty good games at the early part of last season in there as well. Before kind of it all seemed to slightly unravel around January time. Yeah, so let's move on to the Dag Red away game. From one away team going down to 10 men to another. The shots went down 3-2 last night as we record. A goalless first half, but Aldershot hitting the post with Josh Barrett. I can't think of any other chances that we might have had. Dag Red had a chance as well in the first half, but nothing clear cut, nothing you'd say must score. And then a bit of madness. First 13 minutes of the second half, Akpan concedes a penalty for dragging back O'Meara. That's slotted away by Dion Pereira in the 52nd minute. And then 5 minutes later, Theo Widdrington is sent off for a straight red for pushing a Dag Red player in the face. That's all I can see from the thing. I mean, it probably wasn't a closed fist, but it was enough near the neck or throat or face that that is a definite straight red. And then from that resulting free kick, Dag Red made it 2-0. So the game was pretty much lost then. Junior Marias did score in the 77th minute to make it 3-0, and then shots down to 10 men staged a little comeback. Dejan Tetek scored his first goal, and then Jack Barham scored in the 91st minute. And then there were a couple of chances for 10 men Aldershot that could have got back into the game and glossed over what was a horrible 13 minutes at the start of the second half. Julian, where to begin? I suppose we need to start with the red card. And yeah, how did you see it? I presume you've seen the highlight of that.
Yeah, it was obviously a red card all day long, wasn't it? And the really disappointing thing for me is that we were we were looking good. I felt we were pretty comfortable going in at half time, and I think if anybody outside of Dagenham and Redbridge and Aldershot was looking at the game, they would be saying that we were looking more likely to take on the game in the second half. So I think Rob Worrell mentioned it actually in the commentary that the most difficult phase of the game so far for the shots have is normally the first 15 minutes after half time. And we always seem to struggle in that period of time. And of course, the same thing happened again. But yeah, really disappointed with the red card situation. I think we're going to have a little discussion about that the whole scenario later because it put us under pressure. And when you're 2-0 down straight after with that red card, then it really is a mountain to climb. And I know if you've watched Tommy's post-match interview, he's saying, well, we could have scored 6 goals. Yes, he's right. We could have scored 6 goals, but you give yourself a mountain to climb, and you're going to be putting pressure on everybody to score more goals than is needed. Normally most of the teams up the top, if they score 2 goals away from home, then that's enough to get a result, and in most cases get a victory because most of the teams up the top will not be letting in 3 goals in an away performance. So I'm not so sure you can put the blame wholly on the attackers for not scoring 6 last night. To be fair to Jack Barham, he is scoring regularly now. So there's the call from the supporters that we need another striker in. I'm not so sure. I think what we need to do is to not have so many yellows and red cards, which means that we can get a settled lineup and actually get a bit of consistency going. So I'm not entirely convinced that that's the answer to our prayers, getting another forward in. It would be nice, obviously. But we've got Ollie Bray to come back in. He's not far away from coming back into contention. So that's a good thing. And look, we've still got some more games to go until the January transfer window anyway. So we can't keep holding our hat out on waiting for someone to come in to save our season. The players are there. We need to work with what we've got, and we need to show a bit of consistency with regard to, frankly, our discipline, because that's for me is the biggest issue at the moment. So yeah, I feel disappointed with yesterday. You could argue that our captain should be setting an example, and whilst I don't like to single players out, I think in any business, if your leader is not setting the right example, then there's questions to be asked. And also really interesting comment from Tommy about his dressing room after the game, in that no one was prepared to stand up and challenge Theo as to what went wrong, and that disappointed Tommy. And you've got to argue that, is that part of the recruitment process when you're looking to recruit players? Are you looking for 10 quiet lads that won't stand up, or are you looking for people that will stand up, or are you looking for for 10 or 11 Theos that are warrior-like, but potentially going to cause you problems. So it's a fine line. I think if you look back at all the successful teams that the Shots have had, we've had some players in there that have been an authority, that have commanded respect, have got the control over what goes on the pitch, and are prepared to stand up and battle, but are prepared um, to get the troops rallied when the chips are down. Something I noticed again on Saturday was we do seem to be quite a quiet team. I don't see anybody rallying the troops mid-match. If you've got three centre backs, I'm just thinking back to the days of perhaps Ricky Newman, and I'm going back a bit now, but Roy Warburton. They were leaders on the pitch, and I'm not sure we've got very many leaders on the pitch at the moment. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Will.
No, no, I don't. I can't spot any that are standing out to me. I think it's interesting, and potentially a kind of. I mean, he made kind of mention to the dressing room after, as you said, and he also mentioned that he felt that the players mentioned that it felt like they were trying harder or they were running harder when they went down to 10 men. So I would say there's something a bit amiss here if players aren't able to speak up for themselves and say, I mean, because in my head, what I'm thinking, if I was a player, if let's say I'm Ollie Scott and I'm sat in the dressing room and I've got the captain and then his father as my manager and my kind of pseudo boss. Am I going to be the one that's going to be the one that stands up and goes, "That was a disgrace, and you've just cost us that game"? Because if you say something out of line, you're probably not going to be in the starting lineup next week. Is there a? I don't know. That's how I would see it in my. Um, I'm sure as professional footballers, they should be able to speak up for themselves um, and say it. But I mean, that's a disgrace. I mean, and the Widdrington, um, whatever we're going to call it, I don't know. But just call it a sending off offence. It's not quite assault, but nearly. But he did a similar thing to Ryan Glover at home when we played Barnet earlier in the season, um, and got quite lucky that it was on the wrong side of the. I don't think the assistant ref saw, and obviously the ref didn't see. And it was just enough off the ball. This one was barely off the ball, and it's just so obvious and so high as well. Because it's not like Widdrington is 6'4", pushing a guy straight. He had to push up to get near his face. So it's yeah, a woeful way to lose a game that we were generally broadly in control, as much as you can be in control of an away match at Dag Red.
Yeah, if you're on 8 cards already for the season, you have to have an element of control, um, because you've been in that same situation 8 times already this season. You've already had a suspension. There's in any business that you're in, if you're continually doing the same things, then someone has to pull you up. And obviously, it sounds like Tommy did pull up Theo, um, but he was looking for that culture within the dressing room, which is a culture of a winning team. Now, you could argue that the culture to have a frank discussion is is something that should be happening for any winning team. And I'm just wondering whether, like you said, the manager and the captain scenario is just putting some people in a bit of a situation where they're just a little bit worried about speaking up. You're always going to have your hierarchy in the dressing room, aren't you? You're always going to have, with all due respect to Ash Akpan, it's his first season. He's a young kid that's just come in. Is he going to stand up and tell Theo that he was not impressed with that? Probably not. But then you've got people that have been around for a long time, that got the experience, that I think should be able to stand up. We don't know what went on in that dressing room before, middle, and after. But if Tommy mentions it in the post-match interview, then that suggests that there is something not quite right in the dressing room at the moment, and it's his job to sort it.
It is, yeah. And going back to what you were saying earlier about kind of about replacing players or bringing in new players. I don't. There's no point going out there and spending big in January getting a striker in if we can't keep 11 men on the pitch anyway. He can score 10 goals, but if we're conceding four because we're down to 10 men, there's no point in doing it. So that's got to come into it if you're doing a cost analysis up in the boardroom because we're going to keep getting these red cards and the suspensions. I mean, they're around the corner. I mean, Theo's what I think I've got nine here, but maybe eight. I'm not sure. So it's two yellows away from a two-match suspension when he comes back from his three-match suspension. Menezes has already got four. I say already. I think he's actually played quite a lot, hasn't he? And obviously we had James Henry miss out last night because of his totting up of five. So they are, and that was with it's just had the cut off. So I think we might be okay for the rest of them. But Theo's definitely on track to get 10, probably on track to get 15 this season, which will be a free match ban, I think. So he could miss 5 games just from yellows, an extra three because of the straight red. So that's a lot of games to miss in a season. Especially when you're a player that's going to play every week if you're fit, because Dejan Tetek can't play 90 minutes every week. And in the bits that we
I
see
think the
him,
disappointing thing is that we were so bad last season as well, disciplinary wise. We were the worst team in the league, and you would have thought that the management would be focusing on that as a thing because you've mentioned it already. I think, well, it's hard to think of a team this season where it's not been affected by a suspension. We're getting red cards all over the place, and what have we played now? Is it 19, 20 games? And well, it must be 10 of those have been affected by uh, inavailability of players that haven't been available because of a card or whatever. So, without that consistency in place, that's your starting point, isn't it? You need to be able to pick your best 11 players for the situation, whatever that situation is. You need to have those best 11 players available to you. And if you haven't got two or three of them available, and then you've got two or three that are injured, already you're struggling to get your best team out for sure. And again, with our mentality this season of perhaps quantity over quality, then when the players do come in, and of course they then need game time to get up to speed. You know, Aaron Jones has not had a consistent run of games yet through injury and suspension, and he needs probably 6, 7, 8 games before he's up to speed. And of course, he'll have those 6, 7, or 8 games. He'll pick up probably a red card in there, and he'll be out again. So his contract finishes at the end of the season. So is he deemed as value for money as our captain? So there's questions to be answered there, and I think if we can really work out what's going on with the yellows and reds, that's the starting point, isn't it? I think.
yeah, and we could obviously add Magoma there, who has probably had he's been under a fair amount of flack for his performances in general. But I think he's another player that just he does need a run if he's going to be in this team. But his season is being broken up by yellow cards totting up the horrendous challenge against Bath to get sent off. So he's in a similar boat. Those three I kind of mentioned a fair few weeks ago, and they've all kind of Aaron Jones can't get back in the team. Magoma is coming back in the team, but only because someone else has either got suspended or had to come off.
I
Yeah,
think your comment, Will, was quite apt a few weeks ago, where you said, if we've got Macoma, Jones, and Theo in the team, then it's a red card waiting to happen, isn't it? And I think you've been proved right.
yeah, yeah. I think that's it. Oh dear. So yeah, not a great not great signs for the shots. And I think also that in my head last season we weren't. Well, now looking back, obviously you look back with rose-tinted glasses when we're sitting down in 17th. But in my head, it was all basically Tolaj and Stokes getting a lot of silly yellow cards when they were pressing and stuff. Obviously, Theo was contributing to those as well. I assumed once we'd taken Josh Stokes's yellows out, we'd actually look, like a mid-table disciplinary team. But it's I think it's definitely trending to be worse than last season, which is not good when we're not performing as well as we should either. I don't mind being bottom of the disciplinary table if we're fifth or something, but yeah. So let's move on to kind of what's up next. We're supposedly we've got Southampton under 21s in National League Cup next Tuesday, 3rd of December. And then we move on to Wilson at home in the FA Trophy. So that one, I mean, I'm dreading that one now after the Dag Red game. And then we have got a tough run of fixtures following that. So we've got Solihull on the 10th of December, which is rearranged from this coming Saturday, the 30th of November. And then we've got Halifax at home and then Forest Green away before the Christmas break. And of course, Woking at home. Julian, how are you feeling about this little kind of mini break that we get here and then moving into the FA Trophy game?
It could well be a blessing in disguise to have this little break. It might be seen as a time to reset. But we've got some tough fixtures, as you said, coming up between now and Christmas. It's two really tough away games there in Solihull and Forest Green. Halifax at home isn't going to be easy either. Throw in a couple of cup games as well. That's a tough December, and that's even before we talk about the Woking games as well. So I think he's going to use this time to really reset, recharge, and spend the time on the training ground, getting back to basics, getting that formation right, getting he's going to know his lineups pretty quickly, so he'll have plenty of time to practice on shape and formation and pressing and when to press and when not to press, all those sorts of things that they do on the training fields these days. So I'm thinking actually the break will do us good. Yeah, I think it's going to do us good, and also with two cup games to come as well, I think it will just allow us to get back to winning ways. This National League Cup, we've talked about it quite a few times as being a pain in the proverbial backside, but actually it has given us a chance to spring forward. We had those two good results in the trophy and the National League Cup before, which got us back to winning ways. So I think it's going to be a positive experience in the sense that we've got this time now to reset and recharge. I don't know whether Tommy's going to get a behind closed doors game in place perhaps for this Saturday just to keep the 90 minutes fitness levels. It wouldn't surprise me if that happens, just to keep those fitness levels going. But yeah, I'm hoping that it's a really good opportunity to blow away the cobwebs of everything that's been going on. Um, yeah, and to be fair to the Dagenham game, there was lots of good things that come out of that. There was some really good performances, and to be actually in with a shout at the end after being 3-0 down, you've got to take the hat off to the players. So positives from the Altrincham game, positives from the Dag game, sort us disciplinary stuff out, get ourselves reset. Couple of nice wins in the cup competitions will set us up really nicely for those three tricky games before Christmas.
That's what I like to hear. Nice positive spin at the end of that. It is true. It's true. It's easy to look at Dag Red and be like, oh God, it was, and it was a kind of 13 minutes of madness and, giving away a penalty and then conceding a red card and then conceding immediately from that free kick. That's about as bad as a bad a start you can have to a second half. But they did rally after going down to 10. Well, actually going 3-0 down, then they rallied. But yeah, as we've said, we can't rely on our on 10 men to sweep things up. So hopefully, yeah, I presume he does seem to be a fan of getting a behind closed doors. I think it was a few weeks ago they played Wickham in I can't remember what day of the week they played, but that it seems to have a good contact list for that. And Southampton under 21s will be a pretty stern test, I imagine. I imagine they're one of the better under 21 teams that we're going to face. And we'll probably put out a full strength side, I imagine, because they won't have played in 10 days. Grand. I think that's about it. we can really preview. We don't know all the results from tonight, but Ultra are currently in 17th, and hopefully we'll stay there until um, the 14th of December, which is our next league game, which is quite crazy. Um, nice. Well, thank you, Julian, for coming on, and we'll be back again next week.
Cool. Up the shots.